I am in desperate need of some new blouses. So now it's not like I don't have any blouses, but there are a few blouses that all have the exact same problem, and I made them, so it's my fault. Exhibit A. Very tight on the sleeves right here, hurts my arm. Exhibit B, the blouse I made from my Sophie costume for Expedition 33. So this one is generally fine, it fits me quite well. It does have a bit of a loose button up here, but there's one problem with it. And this 1940s blouse I made some time ago has the exact same problem. In fact, they all have this problem. Problem being, I made them from some really nice linen cottonish material and they require ironing. And if you know anything about me, you'll know that I hate ironing. Like, I see that it is necessary to do when I'm sewing, but I wash blouses too often to be required to iron them every single time. So these blouses are just unironed in my wardrobe. And every time I want to wear a blouse, I look at them and I go, nah, and end up wearing cardigans with nothing but a corset underneath. So there's obviously one thing we can do to remedy this curse, and that happens to be using bed sheets. So this is a bed sheet I recently acquired. It has some red and gray lines in it. This fabric just looked at me in the shop and it screamed that it wanted to be turned into a blouse. And who am I to deny this request? But the thing is, these blouses I've just shown you are my trusted 1940s pattern that I'm really fond of. But I also really want to make an Edwardian blouse, especially after making that Edwardian Explorer outfit. I have been so obsessed with how the sleeves turned out and generally how the blouse was sitting. So I'm almost like I could also make something like that. Because I need blouses to wear for a day-to-day just under my cardigan, but it would also be nice to have a blouse with a really nice sleeve to come out under a pinafore. I have a single bedsheet here, so it's not tons of fabric, but I also don't need tons of fabric for a blouse. So I'm hoping that I'll have just about enough to make an Edwardian blouse and a 1940s blouse out of the same pattern, and then we can decide which one we like better. So let's go and find my patterns. It is a miracle. I have found all of the pattern pieces I need. So let me just show you the differences between our two patterns. So this is going to be our 1940s blouse. A little bit hard to see because this is a copy of an original pattern, but we've got a dart right here going all the way to there. And then there's meant to be some darts around here as well. For the back, on the other hand, we've got some darts here again. As for the sleeve, I am planning to use this sleeve, which has darts in the shoulder as well, so that it's not going to be gathered but has darts and has a bit more of a square shape. For the collar, I'm going to use this little collar so that I can wear the front open. So I'm not going to button it up all the way to the top, but rather wear it open. I don't need any cuffs for this because this just ends in the fabric being hemmed. On the other hand, for my Edwardian blouse, I'm planning to use the pattern that I used for my Edwardian Explorer outfit. So that's actually a 1950s pattern, but with that I'm using my Edwardian bishop sleeve pattern. Planning to use a stand-up collar that comes from another Edwardian pattern. And let's pray that I actually have enough fabric for two blouses. All our pattern pieces are cut out and I just about had enough. There's like literally nothing left. So I managed to just about squeeze all of my patterns onto that single bed sheet. I have put the collars and the cuffs onto interfacing, which is something I never used to do back in the days when I first started sewing because I thought it was just an unnecessary step. Now that I have been facing all of these issues with my blouses, having these collars that are all wrinkled up, I'm realizing maybe if I had done this step, this wouldn't have happened. So lately I've been using interfacing for all of my collars, on dresses and all of my cuffs, sometimes even for waistbands, just because, you know, I have learned from my own mistakes. And as I was doing that, I was actually talking to you guys. I filmed it and went into a really deep, sad tantrum about how I'm currently applying for jobs and how it's just very hopeless and how I'm soon going to be unemployed. But I've decided, you know, the world is dark enough. You don't need me telling you about it. So instead, I am just going to show you the finished collars and not tell you about my job search because it's been very humbling. But anyways, I have put all of this on interfacing. So now we're just going to start assembling blouses properly. And I think I'm going to start with the 1940s one. This is the front, and as I mentioned, it has a little dart up here. So it's just going to have a dart running to the apex of the bust. The back, I normally, with this, just put a dart that runs all the way from the top of the back to where the waist ends, because I just feel like I hate bulky backs. I can work with some bulk being around here, but if there's bulk right here, hate it so very much. So I always fit the back so very snug just so that this doesn't happen. So this is what we're going to do here as well. But I normally tend to assemble the blouse first. So I make the dart into the shoulder, assemble the blouse, put it onto my mannequin and fit it then, because that makes it easier just to kind of like estimate where things have to be. So I will show you a little sequence of me sewing and having random movies on, which I haven't decided on what to watch yet. Hopefully something better than I watched in my last video. And then we will reconvene when it comes to the fitting. So we have assembled the base of our blouse and now we need to somehow fit it. So if I was to wear a skirt over it, it would just kind of sit like this, which isn't very nicely shaped. So what we're going to do, we're going to turn it inside out to make our life easier. So now this is easier if you have a mannequin. I'm aware not everyone does have a mannequin. You can also do it on yourself, whereas the back one is going to be a little bit more difficult, so you might need someone to help you with it. But basically, as you can see, these are the side seams here. So I want them to sit right there. And in order to get them to sit there, I would have to take about this much out of the back. So I just pin that in. And I can see that there's still too much fabric all the way to here. So I don't want to take too much out of this here, because actually like the back right up here does curve a bit. So I do probably want to take the dart maybe up to here or so. The mannequin is quite flat here. I have quite a big bum. So I want this to kind of like just come out almost at the same angle as these side pieces here. So it almost has a peplum at the back, just to make sure it's not going to get too tight over my hips. I'll take you a little bit closer so you can see what I've actually done here. So you can see the pins going all the way along here and then coming back out here so that all of this sits nice and flat. So now we just have to do the exact same thing with the front. And with the front, we already have the benefit of having this dart here. So we know where the apex of the bust is going to be. So basically, I want to stay in line with that and pinch that. Take a little bit more out from under the bust, because I really want this curve to be visible, because I will be wearing a bullet bra with this, so I kind of want to emphasize the pointiness of the chest. I don't know if this is a good thing to emphasize, but it is period appropriate. So this is what we're going to do. Just to be very certain this will actually fit, I will quickly pop it onto myself, because the mannequin and I have kind of changed in size. I've gained some weight, so my waist is still the right size. The mannequin has a much chunkier neck than me and smaller chest area, but also it's an adjustable mannequin and it can only be adjusted so much. She and I are not the same anymore, but it's still a helpful tool as I'm pinning stuff. So let's try this on and make sure this is actually also working on my body. It fits really well. It's not like overly super tight, but it definitely is tight enough to emphasize the shape of my body. And all of the waist bits are sitting in the right places as far as I'm aware. I also wanted to say, because in one of my previous videos when I worked with antique patterns, someone said they hate about antique patterns that the armholes are so tight. And hear me out. I love this about antique patterns. I feel like whenever I work with modern patterns, the armholes are massive and I just cannot deal with it. It like absolutely annoys me, because the thing about this armhole is it goes all the way right into my crease here. So when I lift my arms, you can tell how this bit here doesn't move at all, because it's not affected, because it doesn't like extend over my shoulders. So this is kind of the secret to how your blouse doesn't untuck, because if I now put a skirt over this and I lift my arm, well, nothing happens. So it just stays right here, which is why I love snug armholes. They're like the key to everything. So if I use modern patterns, I often alter the armhole to be tighter just so I can do gymnastics, which I don't, but if I wanted to, I could, and the blouse would not come out of my skirt. With that being out of the way, let's sew these darts in. I will then go along here and cut all of this out, and I will finish it with a zigzag seam, which is also something you guys asked about. I don't have an overlocker. I always used to say I didn't have space for an overlocker in the old flat, which now doesn't apply anymore, but now I don't have money. But basically, I just zigzag all of my seams, and it's not nice or neat, but it is good enough. Like I've sewn for like 5 years now, and I still have some of the things I made back in my first year, washed so very many times, and the seams hold up fine. So I don't think a trained seamstress would walk into my house, look at my wardrobe and be like, that seam finish, brilliant. But it is practical, it works, it's quick. So this is just how I finish all of my seams. But now let's sew. And just like that, we have a perfectly fitted blouse. Let's tug it into our skirt. And now it sits perfect. And as you can tell, there is very little bulk around the waist so that it emphasizes the shape. Okay, so what needs to be done next? We need to do the collar and we do the button front. So I think I'm actually going to do it in that order. Normally with this being printed, I would have done some kind of facing to the inside, so then when the collar opens, you can't see the half printed inside, but I don't have enough fabric for that. So I think we'll just have to stick with the inside not properly being printed. I've made the sleeves, but I'm actually going to try something this time that I've never done before, because one of my Emmy design jumpers has these really small little polsters basically sewn into the seam right here, just to give myself a little bit more of a square shoulder with this 1940s style blouse. So I've just cut out these small half moons, and they are made from the fabric that is the other side of the bedsheet, but I'm going to use the unprinted side just to make it a little bit less visible. This is also like a waffle fabric, so it has some texture to it already, making it a bit more stiff. But I'm just going to sew along the edges here, then fill it with some leftover fabric and just like pop it in here where the sleeve goes, just on the top, just to puff it up a little bit more. Not sure if it's gonna work, but I have always been wanting to try this, so let's give it a try. A very quick last try on before I will set the button front, and I will add some buttonholes for this. But this is what my 1940s blouse looks like so far. Very happy with how it's coming along. I think it looks really cute, and just a few more things that need done. But I will have my lunch break first and then continue. But obviously I don't want to give away the final result, even though this already gives it away quite a bit. So instead of showing you the final steps, I will go ahead and we will continue with the Edwardian blouse. These are our pieces for the Edwardian blouse. So generally speaking, because this is also a blouse, there's not too much of a difference in how we're going to construct this. So we've got the back piece here, which will also have a dart in the back to make it super nice and snug. The front pieces look like this, but in this case, we're going to have a dart right here. So now we could have used an actually Edwardian pattern for this, but this one fits so well that I don't see the point in trying a different pattern. So maybe the dart placement isn't properly historically accurate, but it's going to look Edwardian, trust me on this. So we will have a dart right here, and usually there should be another dart right there, but we're not going to fit the front, which is because for Edwardian blouses, we do want a little pigeon breast. So we don't want this bit here fitted, we do want a little bit of excess fabric, but very importantly, not on the sides, not on the back, just towards the front. And then we of course have our big sleeves that go into cuffs, and then our collar. So with this collar, I'm going to sandwich the upper edge of the fabric in between, whereas with the 1940s blouse I used some bias binding to bind it. Originally I was hoping to do the cuffs and the collar on a white fabric, but then I realized that the only white bedsheet I had was very much more off-white than this white, so it would have looked silly. So we're just doing everything from the same color. But first up, we're going to assemble the bodice and then do some fitting. I have assembled the blouse, and as I have told you previously, so I'm not recording it, I have also put in a dart here. So with this one being Edwardian, we don't want it to be fitted up here, we just want it to be very fitted here. So by just putting the single dart in here, we have achieved the silhouette we were desiring. And as I've been sewing, I've been watching this TV show that just recently came out, and it's called Sandokan, the Pirate Prince. I know it sounds cringy, but it's not actually that bad. It is a little bit like not new, if that makes sense. So we've got our main girl, Marianne, who lives with her father, who happens to be the consul in Malaysia. And she's very wild and free. She's like, no, father, you cannot force me to wear shoes. I do never want to marry. Never, never. Then comes in a group of pirates that are surprised by this pirate hunter being Chuck Bass. So that's already pretty cool. And when I saw Chuck Bass is in it, I was sold. So one of the pirates, who happens to be our main man, Sandokan, escapes and falls into the water and gets washed ashore, and our lady Marianne finds him there. Obviously, she's immediately like, who is this man? He's like, I am a merchant. I am definitely not a pirate. So he just lurks around the embassy for a while and pretends to be some kind of merchant, and she's really into him. But then Chuck Bass is also really into her, so he then proposes to her. But then our man Sandokan tries to free the other pirates, and in doing so she like surprises him, and then he has to take her away as well and abducts her, which is not necessarily a cool thing to do. So that's kind of like the 2 episodes I've just watched, and Sandokan is so very Cassian coded. I'm just like watching it, I'm like, this is just Cassian pretending to be a pirate in Malaysia. But I have to say, I am not a Cassian girl. I am an Asriel and Dorian Halvilliard girl. I've always jokingly been saying that probably the next ACOTAR will come out after I finish my PhD, but now that I'm actually finishing my PhD in like 1.5 months, can't believe this book is still not even announced. Like, what's going on? I am going to continue working on this. Next steps will be sewing this down, adding the collar, doing something about the button front, hemming the bottom, putting the sleeves into a cuff before then sewing together and putting in here. Let's get that done, and let's watch our man Cassian do some more pirating. We're making good progress, so it's time for another try on. So with this one, as you can tell, it is perfectly snug around the waist, but then when I turn around, I've got this little bit of extra fabric here. So this way I still have the silhouette that I want, but while having this little bit of pigeon breast, but without it being very pigeony, because that's not quite something I enjoy on myself. But I would actually go as far as saying I prefer this one better than the 1940s one currently. I think the 1940s one is obviously the one that I've been using for tons of my patterns. So this is basically what I normally tend to call my Leti pattern. So I've used it for many projects I've done before. But I really think this one just fits so very well. So I think this one might be the one that I shall be using for future projects, just as like my base block to work with. So that means now I still need to do the sleeves, then I need to do the buttons, and then we need to iron, because I haven't ironed anything along the way. One last stretch of sewing, and then we're finally going to be done for the day. It is only 4:30 and we are already finished with the sewing for the day. I'm very excited. I just tried both of the blouses on and I'm honestly so excited with how they turned out. I feel like I first tried one on and I was like, oh no, this one's definitely my favorite. And then tried on the other one and I was like, oh no, this one's definitely my favorite. I think they're both very different and I'm really looking forward to styling them both in like an Edwardian way and then the other one in the 1940s way, and showing you how different they can look even though they come from the same bedsheet. But that means we are now ready for the reveal. So let's take a look at the finished blouses. That's it. So what do you think? Do you prefer the 1940s blouse or the Edwardian blouse? I personally think the 1940s blouse will get so very much wear out of it. I love having these very short sleeves because it just means I can wear a cardigan over it and it doesn't really get in the way. Like the feeling of sleeves tugging under a cardigan is just something that makes me really uncomfortable. So the 1940s blouse is super practical, and with the little poofs it just gives me the right silhouette, and it's going to be something I'll just wear all the time as a basic. This one, on the other hand, I adore. I feel like this one is more of a blouse I'll wear that actually shows off the blouse. I love the sleeves, I love the fit, love the color. Yeah, I'm just generally really happy with how this turned out. If I was to make this again, I would make it exactly the same way. So that is a very good sign. So yeah, this was a very useful video for me because it means I now have more blouses I can actually wear. I hope you took something from this video as well. Maybe you learned something, or at least it entertained you to hear me talk about Sandokan, which, by the way, I finished on that Saturday when I was sewing. I'm very grateful to have you all here and to have your support and that you watch my videos. And I hope I will see you all in my next video. So bye-bye.